What if the most life-changing moment of your story started with a cockroach? She didn't know his name. He didn't know hers. But when fear made her leap, literally, into a stranger's arms, their worlds collided in a way neither of them could have imagined. He was a billionaire hiding in plain sight. She was a woman running out of chances. This isn't just a love story. It's a story about truth, betrayal, redemption, and the kind of forgiveness that only comes once in a lifetime. Stay with us, because this isn't how fairy tales begin, but it's exactly how they should end. Let me tell you a story that starts with panic and ends with forever. It was a chilly Tuesday morning in downtown Portland. Rain ticked softly against the cafe windows where the scent of cinnamon rolls and espresso clung to the air like a warm hug. Inside the Willow and Pine coffee house, 25-year-old Lila Monroe was rushing to refill the cream station already late setting up for the morning rush. Her apron was crooked, her ponytail was lopsided, and her nerves, they were hanging by a thread. She didn't see it at first. No one did. Not until it scurried out from beneath the counter with twitching antennae and wings poised like it owned the place. A cockroach. A big one. Lila let out a shriek that could have cracked the espresso machine. Her eyes darted frantically, and in a full-body jolt of terror, she leapt into the nearest lap, unaware that the lap belonged to a sharply dressed stranger, quietly enjoying his morning coffee by the window. Cups clattered. His laptop nearly flew off the table. The man barely flinched, though Lila was now clinging to him, like a terrified squirrel. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped. It had wings. The man, tall, composed mid-30s, and impossibly calm, tilted his head slightly amused. "Well, I guess this answers how your day's going," he said, his voice smooth as honey and warm as the cafe's lighting. Still trembling in his lap, Lila tried to slide off mortified. "I don't usually do this. Jump on people, I mean. Only when I'm at risk of being eaten alive." "Good to know," he chuckled. "So, you save that kind of reaction for the really terrifying bugs." A beat passed. Their eyes met. Lila's cheeks flushed crimson, but she couldn't look away from the stranger's face. Confident, steady, with a grin that suggested he didn't mind the interruption one bit. Around them, the cafe staff scrambled after the rogue insect, knocking over a sugar canister in the process. A customer screamed when it crawled up a chair leg. Still seated, the man lifted a newspaper, waited for the roach to reappear, and smacked it with pinpoint precision. "Silence. Threat neutralized," he said coolly, brushing his hands and setting the paper down. Then he gently helped Lila back to her feet. Applause erupted from a table of college students nearby. Lila just blinked, still rattled. "That was heroic," she said, brushing crumbs from her shirt. He smirked. "Just another day saving the city from miniature monsters." "Thank you," she said sincerely, then added with a sheepish smile, "I'm Lila, by the way." He looked at her for a moment. "Nice to meet you, Lila." He gave no name in return, just that same mysterious smile, the kind that tugged at your curiosity and wouldn't let go. Moments later, he paid in cash, leaving a tip big enough to buy a new blender, and vanished out the front door. Her coworker Megan rushed up behind the counter. "Who was that guy? Did he just save us from nuclear-level embarrassment?" "No idea," Lila muttered, her pulse still racing. "But he's never coming back. I looked insane." Megan smirked. "Are you kidding?" He walked out smiling. "Girl, that man's either very into you or extremely entertained." That night, as Lila sat on her couch with a pint of Rocky Road and a blanket pulled to her chin, her thoughts kept drifting to the man with the calm smile and the steady hands. Who was he? She didn't even get his name. Meanwhile, a few blocks away in a penthouse office atop a gleaming tower, that same man, Elijah Barrett, tech mogul and founder of Barrett Innovations, sat at his mahogany desk, scrolling through his phone. He typed in Lila Monroe Willow and Pine coffee into the search bar. "Oh, seen mom and wyggy stuff." He wasn't sure what had made him smile more. The chaos of the roach, the way she clung to him like he was the only safe place in the room, or the way she had looked at him like he was just normal. Not a billionaire, not a headline, just a man holding her steady in a storm of wings and panic. Elijah leaned back in his chair. I think he murmured to no one, "I just found something real." The next morning, Lila walked into the Willow and Pine coffee house, expecting a fresh start, maybe even a laugh with her coworkers about the cockroach catastrophe. Instead, she was met with the stone-cold face of her manager, Diane. "Lila, office, now." The words dropped like lead. Inside the cramped office tucked behind the pastry fridge, Diane folded her arms tightly across her cardigan. I got 3 calls this morning from regulars. They said yesterday's scene was unprofessional. One called it an embarrassment to the establishment. Lila blinked. It was a reflex I didn't mean. You jumped into a customer's L-ape? Diane snapped. What if he sued? What if corporate found out I can't take that risk? You're fired effective immediately. The silence was suffocating. Lila felt the floor drop beneath her. Fired over a cockroach. She left the cafe through the back alley, a paper bag filled with her few belongings clutched in one hand and her pride shattered in the other. Back in her shared apartment, her roommate and best friend Jamie found her curled up on the couch under a throw blanket, face buried in a pillow. Do I need to break out the wine or the emergency cookie dough? Jamie asked. I got fired, Lila mumbled, for causing a public spectacle. Because of the roach. Because of how I reacted to the roach. Jamie plopped beside her. That's insane. Also, kind of on brand for Portland. Lila gave a half-hearted laugh, but the sting lingered. That evening, in a towering office on the 32nd floor of Barrett Innovations, Elijah Barrett stood by the window, gazing out over the city's twinkling lights. But his mind wasn't on market trends or tech prototypes. It was on her. He'd Googled her, found her public LinkedIn profile. No job now, it seemed, and the words marketing and customer engagement had caught his eye. She had potential, and she'd been treated unfairly. So he made a call. The next morning, Lila's phone rang just as she was finishing another online job application. The number was unknown, the area code corporate. Hello, this is Lila. Hi, Ms. Monroe. My name is Carly Brooks. I'm with the HR department at Barrett Innovations. We're currently looking for an administrative associate with a marketing background, and your name came recommended. Lila sat bolt upright. I didn't apply for anything at Barrett. Sometimes our recruiting algorithm pulls strong profiles. Are you available for an interview tomorrow afternoon? The next day, Lila arrived at a skyscraper that looked like something out of a superhero movie. Sleek, towering, untouchable. Inside, the lobby buzzed with energy. People in tailored suits, glowing digital displays, and a concierge who greeted her by name. 32nd floor. Carly's expecting you? The interview went like a dream. Carly was warm, professional, and utterly impressed by Lila's experience at the cafe, especially her knack for people in fast-paced environments. An hour later, Lila walked out with a job offer. A real one. A real salary. And she had no idea that Elijah Barrett himself had orchestrated every bit of it. Her first day was a whirlwind. Desk assignment, security badge, welcome packet. The offices were modern and flooded with light. Glass walls, vibrant artwork, and standing desks that adjusted with a tap. That's when she bumped into Eli. Literally. Carrying a box of office supplies down the hallway, he turned the corner, and Lila walked straight into him, sending a packet of branded pens skittering across the floor. You, she gasped, recognition lighting her face. Eli gave a bashful grin. Hey there, Roach Warrior. Lila's jaw dropped. You work here. Guilty, he said. They've got me running supplies and chasing paper jams. Glamorous stuff. You're a box guy, she asked, trying to mask the mix of shock and relief flooding her chest. Something like that, he said with a shrug. I pop between departments. I'm a bit of a utility player. She nodded, still a little stunned. Well, thank you again. You really saved me that day. Not just from the bug. From total humiliation. Least I could do, he said with a soft smile, then added, Welcome to the team. As she walked back to her desk, she couldn't help but feel like the universe had just given her a second chance. At work, maybe even at something more. Elijah, meanwhile, ducked into a side room, pulled out his phone, and called his assistant. Riley, I need a desk set up on the 31st floor. Make it look real, like I belong there, but nothing flashy. Somewhere near admin. I'm going to be spending more time down there. Riley was quiet. Sir? Do I even want to know why? It's research, Elijah replied. Research? Yeah, on human connection. Over the next week, Elijah built a rhythm. Mornings were spent on executive decisions and billion-dollar strategies. Afternoons, however, belonged to the 31st floor, where he'd carry boxes, deliver memos, and have casual, unexpected run-ins with Lila. To her, he was just Eli, the handsome, slightly awkward supply guy with a sharp wit and gentle charm. To everyone else, He was the man who could sign million-dollar deals before breakfast, and he couldn't stop thinking about her. Not her resume, not her background, just her quick laugh, her wild opinions about overpriced coffee, and the way she had made him feel like he was just normal, that to Elijah Barrett was worth more than any stock option. By week 2 at Barrett Innovations, Lila Monroe had found her groove. She was learning the filing system, managing calendar invites, and prepping weekly decks for the marketing leads, all while harboring a soft curiosity for the lanky guy with the cargo pants and untamed hair, who always seemed to appear when she needed a new printer cartridge. Eli, as he'd introduced himself, was funny in a quiet way, charming, but never in a try-hard sense. He brought her Post-it notes in the shape of llamas and once snuck her a box of blueberry muffins after hearing her grumble about forgetting breakfast. They shared lunches in the staff lounge, quick banter in the hallways, and occasional glances that lingered just a second too long. To Lila, he was refreshingly real. That was rare in a place where most people spoke in acronyms and wore watches that cost more than her rent. But unknown to her, Eli, the sweet supply guy who always had a backup stapler, was actually Elijah Barrett, the CEO, whose name graced the gold-lettered plaque outside the 32nd floor boardroom, and he was falling for her. Hard. One afternoon, Lila sat in the break room stirring oat milk into her coffee when her colleagues started gossiping about the elusive CEO. "You ever seen him?" asked Ray from brand design, peeling a clementine. "Only one," said Jared from analytics. "Tall, sharp suit, total Gordon Gekko energy. Lives on the 32nd floor. Doesn't breathe the same air as us mortals." Lila raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? He never comes down here." "Why would he?" Ray replied. "He's probably too busy bathing in gold coins." Lila laughed. "I bet he's the type who schedules 10-minute meetings just to remind you he's more important than your lunch." Behind her, Eli choked on his water. She turned. "You okay?" "Yep, just had an image of the CEO actually doing that." "Funny stuff." She shrugged. "People like that, they don't live in the real world. They were born into money and think they built their empires from scratch. I mean, I'd respect someone more if they actually worked their way up from, like, say, running supply deliveries." Eli swallowed hard. "Maybe the CEO's not all that bad," he offered casually. "Oh, please," she said, laughing. "Next thing you'll tell me is that he buys his own groceries." He smiled, but behind that smile was a quiet ache. Because the truth was, he did buy his own groceries. He liked the feel of pushing a cart picking up apples one by one. It reminded him of a time before the IPOs, before magazine covers, before the constant pressure to be perfect. But he couldn't tell her that. Not yet. Later that week, they shared a lunch break at a food truck outside the building, a spot Lila swore had the best grilled cheese in the state. Eli had never eaten from a food truck before, not once. But when Lila's eyes lit up at the smell of sizzling cheddar and sourdough, he found himself standing in line beside her, cash in hand. "This place is an institution," she said between bites, "and don't even think about asking for sparkling water. They'll laugh you out of here." Eli grinned. "No sparkling water." "Got it." As they sat on a curbside bench watching pigeons fight over crumbs, she asked him the first personal question she ever had. "So, what's your story?" Eli, college kid turned office handyman, retired astronaut spy. He laughed. "Something like that. Let's just say I needed a change of pace. This environment, the people, it helps me feel grounded." She nodded slowly. "I get that. After what happened at the cafe, I was pretty shaken. But this job, this team, it's been a lifeline. And meeting you," she paused, then smiled, "wasn't so bad either." Elijah's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her everything right then. Who he was, what he was doing, how it had all started, because of a cockroach and turned into something he never saw coming. But instead, he said, "You ever think about what you'd do if you had all the money in the world?" Lila didn't miss a beat. "I'd open a nonprofit for teen artists, give kids a place to paint, write, sing, express themselves without worrying about rent or student loans." He blinked. "That's actually incredible." "Why?" she asked. "What would you do?" He looked at her, his eyes serious. "I'd do exactly this. Sit on a bench with you, eat grilled cheese, talk about real things." Lila blushed and looked down at her half-eaten sandwich. There was something in his voice, something deeper, and for a second she wondered, but no, Eli was just Eli. Back in the office, Elijah returned to his executive suite, just long enough to sign off on quarterly reports and avoid a meeting with European investors. His mind wasn't on stock trends or mergers. It was on a girl who thought CEOs were overrated and food trucks were sacred. And he couldn't stop the smile that spread across his face when he thought about her laugh, her fire, her dreams. He had built a tech empire before 30. But this was the first time he felt like he was building something that actually mattered, something real. It was a Thursday. Lila Monroe had just finished organizing a massive binder of campaign materials when Carly from HR popped her head into the room. "Hey Lila, I need a huge favor," she said, breathless. "Can you bring this folder up to Mr. Barrett's office top floor? 30-second. We've got a meeting with Japanese investors in 10 minutes, and he needs it ASAP." Lila blinked. "Wait, Barrett, as in—" "Yes," Carly said quickly. "The Barrett? Go now. Just knock and head in. We're tight on time." Lila stared at the folder, crisp white cover gold embossing. Her fingers suddenly felt stiff as she took it. This was it. Her first encounter with the CEO she had mocked over stale coffee and lukewarm breakroom chats. The man she had imagined wearing suits tailored by snobs, sipping $12 matcha while issuing memos like war orders. She had no idea what he looked like. She had never seen him in person. And yet, for some strange reason, her chest tightened. Elevator ride, 32 floors. A mirror of brushed metal showing her panic rising with every ding. She reached the top, stepped into a corridor draped in silence marble and soft leather furniture that smelled like generational wealth. She found the last door on the right, took a breath, knocked, no answer. "Just walk in," Carly had said. She opened the door, and then the world stopped. There, standing at the head of a gleaming table, leading a group of sharply dressed executives in active conversation, was Eli. Not the Eli who brought her staplers. Not the Eli who ate grilled cheese with her on the curb. Not the Eli who got tongue-tied when she teased him about the office coffee. Eli was Elijah Barrett. Her Eli was the CEO. Her hand went numb. The folder slipped from her grip papers, fanning out across the floor like confetti at a wedding gone horribly wrong. The room fell silent. Lila Elijah said, stepping forward, voice tight with alarm. "You're him," she stammered, backing up, eyes darting between the golden plaque on the wall. Elijah C., Barrett founder and CEO, and the man she had spent weeks falling for. "Lila, please, I can explain everything." But she was already moving blindly, backpedaling out of the room, nearly bumping into a startled executive in the hallway. She didn't care. She ran, down the corridor, into the elevator, hands shaking, lungs burning. By the time she burst into the parking garage, tears were stinging her eyes. He had lied. He had played a role. Everything, from the muffins to the banter to the dumb jokes about the CEO, had been a farce. She heard footsteps echoing behind her. "Leela!" Elijah's voice rang out desperate, but she couldn't bring herself to turn around. "Don't," she said, voice trembling. "Don't come near me." He stopped a few feet away, his suit jacket, still unbuttoned hair, ruffled from chasing her. "Just listen, please." "Listen!" she shouted, spinning to face him. To what? More lies. More cute stories from the box guy. "It wasn't like that. Wasn't it?" she snapped. "Was anything real, Elijah?" "I didn't mean to deceive you," he said, hands raised like she was a spooked animal. I wanted you to see me. Not the CEO, not the bank account, just me. And what gave you the right to manipulate me like that?" "I wasn't trying to manipulate." "You let me mock you to your face," she cried. "You let me think I was confiding in someone safe, someone normal." "You were," he said. "Every word, every smile, every moment we shared, it was real." "You lied, Elijah," she said, her voice breaking. "And now I can't tell what was real and what was just some twisted fairy tale you were scripting." He took a hesitant step forward. "Lila, I love you." The words hung in the air like smoke. She stared at him. The suit, the polished shoes, the perfect posture. She no longer saw Eli, the guy who delivered pens. She saw a stranger who had been hiding in plain sight. "I don't even know who you are," she whispered. Then she turned, yanked her car door open, and drove off, leaving Elijah standing in a parking lot full of imported cars. The only thing he truly wanted vanishing around the corner. The next morning, Lila handed in her resignation. Carly tried to talk her out of it, so did Ray. But Lila just smiled sadly and packed her things. She had spent weeks falling for a man who didn't exist. Or worse, one who only existed in a carefully crafted lie. Now she just needed distance. And clarity. On the 32nd floor, Elijah stood in his office phone, silent inbox, unread. His assistant Riley entered with the morning briefing, but paused when she saw him. "Sir." He didn't look up. "Am I a terrible person?" Riley hesitated. "You made a mistake. A big one," he murmured. "But not an unforgivable one," she added gently. "At least not if you're willing to do something about it." He turned eyes full of regret. "I would give up every share of this company to have one more lunch on that bench. With her, not as Elijah Barrett, just as me." 2 weeks after walking out of Barrett Innovations, Lila Monroe was still floundering. Her resume, though strong, now carried invisible scars. She had no glowing recommendation, no clear reason for leaving. And when employers Googled her name, they saw headlines like, "CEO Elijah Barrett rumored to have dated entry-level staffer before scandal." It wasn't true, but truth didn't trend. Job interviews dried up. Every Zoom call ended with awkward smiles and "we'll be in touch," followed by silence. And then the final straw, a boutique PR agency she'd applied to, finally invited her in. The office manager, a friendly woman in her 50s named Melinda, looked through Lila's portfolio and beamed. "This is good work, honey," Melinda said. "I'm all for giving someone a second chance. We've all dated a few wrong men." Lila chuckled softly, relieved. "Thank you. I just want a chance to prove myself." But 2 days later, the offer vanished. No call, no email. Just a cold message, "Position has been filled." And that's when Lila began to suspect. This wasn't just bad luck. Something, or someone, was actively sabotaging her. Across the city at the very top of Barrett Tower, Victoria Langford sat in a sleek leather chair across from a grim-faced man wearing mirrored glasses. He didn't belong in this world of gold-embossed walls and hand-poured coffee. He belonged in shadows. "I want her reputation destroyed," Victoria said, sliding a sealed envelope across the desk. "Emails, phone calls, I don't care how you do it. No one should want to hire her again." The man tapped the envelope. "You understand this is illegal. I understand she's a gold-digging snake who humiliated my fiancé." "Ex-fiancé," the man said, arching a brow. Her smile was thin. "Just do it." Meanwhile, Lila sat cross-legged on the floor of her tiny apartment, surrounded by rejection letters, unpaid bills, and half a bag of discount trail mix. Across from her, Jamie held a notepad and looked exasperated. "So, what's the plan? Hide under a blanket until the tabloids forget you exist." "No," Lila muttered, "but I'm out of options." Jamie tossed the notepad in her lap. "Wrong. You've got one option left. Do it yourself." Lila blinked. "What?" "Start your own thing. You have a degree in marketing. You're brilliant with small business ideas. Remember that cafe loyalty program you created? They still use it. And that was 3 years ago." "I don't have money," Lila said. "I barely have enough to cover rent." "Okay, so you work from here. No overhead. No employees. Just you, your laptop, and your brain." Lila bit her lip. Could she actually start a business in the middle of this mess? And then something shifted. Because maybe she was tired of asking people for a seat at their table. Maybe it was time to build her own. A week later, Monroe and Co. was born. A scrappy digital marketing consultancy built for mom-and-pop shops, Etsy sellers, and small-town bakeries that couldn't afford flashy agencies. Her first client was Brenda, the owner of a downtown cupcake shop with zero social media presence. Lila designed a campaign titled Frosted Fridays, giveaways, daily reels, and a partnership with a nearby florist. Sales skyrocketed by 30% in one weekend. "Sweetie, you're a genius," Brenda said, dropping off a thank you box of red velvet cupcakes. "My daughter made me an Instagram reel, and I didn't even know what a reel was." Lila laughed, icing on her cheek, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like herself again. Soon word spread. A pet boutique asked for a holiday promotion. A second-hand bookstore wanted help with event planning. And just like that, Monroe and Co. had a client list. She didn't have investors' business cards or even a proper office. She ran everything from the corner of her apartment next to the window where a stubborn plant refused to grow. But what she did have, purpose, and no one could take that away, except someone was still trying. One night, Lila's laptop began glitching. Files vanished. Her desktop turned into a maze of corrupted folders. Then came the email. "You should have stayed quiet." Chills ran down her spine. Jamie rushed in. "What is it?" "I think I've been hacked." No. Your entire business is on that laptop." Lila nodded slowly, numb. Every file, every invoice, every proposal. They tried rebooting. Nothing. The screen went black. Jamie reached for her phone. We're calling a tech support line or a freaking exorcist. But Lila stared into the darkness, lips pressed in a tight line. "I think I know who did this. Victoria. It was her. It had to be." And somewhere not far from that apartment window, Elijah Barrett was watching it all unfold. He had stayed away, not calling, not texting. He figured Lila needed space. But when he heard the rumors, saw the tabloids, and watched Monroe and Co. being systematically attacked, something in him snapped. He picked up the phone and called his head of cybersecurity. "Her business is under attack. I want every firewall, every backup system, every forensic trace we can throw at it. Restore everything." The technician hesitated. "That'll require full access." "You have it," Elijah said. "Do it." And then softer. "She doesn't even have to know it was me." Within 24 hours, Lila's files were restored. The virus was neutralized. The hacker's trail was traced back to a private network, a very specific one. Elijah read the final report with growing fury. "Victoria," he whispered, jaw clenched. "She hadn't just ruined a relationship. Now she was trying to destroy the woman he still loved. And she'd gone too far." The storm outside had calmed, but inside Elijah Barrett, a different kind of fire was raging. He stood by the tall glass windows of his penthouse office, a folder in hand, its contents damning. Bank transfers, encrypted messages, IP logs, voice recordings. Every piece pointed to one person, Victoria Langford. She had paid a black hat hacker to sabotage Lila Monroe's newly launched business. The same woman she once dismissed as a distraction. Now she had tried to erase her completely. Elijah could feel his hands trembling, not with fear, but with rage. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. This was war. That evening, Victoria arrived at an upscale rooftop lounge, her heels clicking on the marble tile as she sauntered up to Elijah's private booth. She looked perfect, as always. Every strand of hair in place, her smile rehearsed to perfection. "Elijah, darling, it's been too long." He didn't stand to greet her, didn't offer a drink. He simply slid the folder across the table. She paused, then opened it. Her smile faltered by page 2. By page 4, her hands were shaking. "Elijah, I can explain." "Don't," he said quietly. "Every word in there is verified. You tried to destroy her. She was using you. Everyone could see it. She didn't even know who I was when we met." He growled. "And when she did find out, she walked away? That's not gold digging. That's integrity." Victoria's voice dropped an octave. "You're going to ruin me over a barista with a laptop." "I'm not going to ruin you," Elijah said, standing. "You've already done that yourself." He leaned closer. "If you ever touch her again, professionally, personally, digitally, I'll make sure you spend the next 5 years fighting subpoenas instead of shopping." He left without waiting for a response. Victoria didn't follow. For the first time in her life, she was afraid. Meanwhile, across the city, Lila sat cross-legged on the floor of her modest apartment, breathing in disbelief. It had been 3 days since the attack. Her files had been restored. Her laptop, miraculously, was running faster than before. All her clients were intact. Her invoices auto-recovered. And there was no explanation. Jamie watched her from the kitchen, spooning peanut butter out of the jar. "You're being quiet." I can't stop wondering who helped," Lila said. Jamie raised an eyebrow. "You think it was him?" "I don't know. Maybe you'd forgive him if it was—" "I don't know that either." She stared at her now glowing laptop screen. "But someone made sure I didn't lose everything, and they didn't ask for credit." In the weeks that followed, Monroe and Co. grew faster than she ever expected. A local gym hired her for a rebranding campaign. A vegan bakery wanted help launching an online store. A neighborhood yoga studio asked her to design their first website. Some of the clients came through referrals, but others were mysterious. An anonymous tipster had recommended her to the gym's owner. "Sie was despesens papar." The bakery had heard about her through an unnamed contact in the investment world. The yoga studio said she came highly recommended by someone who believed in second chances. Lila started to suspect, and yet no one said a name, not once. At Barrett Innovations, Elijah reviewed every report his assistant Riley sent him about Monroe and Co. Her revenue was growing. Her clients were happy. She had hired a freelance intern. He smiled faintly as he scrolled through screenshots of her campaigns. Vibrant, hopeful, bursting with life. One slide caught his eye. "Empathy is the new strategy." He remembered her saying that once, over a food truck hot dog. People don't buy products, she had said. They buy stories. They buy trust. Elijah ran a tech empire built on data, and somehow she had taught him the power of story. 3 weeks later, Lila received a small box at her doorstep. No return address. Inside was a bouquet of wild daisies, her favorite. She hadn't told many people that. Only one person came to mind. The next day, sunflowers. The day after that, yellow tulips. Every morning brought a new bouquet, always her favorites, always with a small card unsigned. Her apartment was beginning to resemble a botanical garden. Jamie walked in one afternoon and froze in the doorway. "Okay, unless you've started farming what's going on." "I think it's him." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "And you haven't called him because—" "I don't know what I'd say," Lila admitted. "What if he's just doing this out of guilt? What if it's too late?" Jamie looked around the flower-filled room and rolled her eyes. "Girl, you're either in a rom-com or the most well-funded apology tour of all time." Lila smiled. "Just a little." And in his penthouse, Elijah stood by the window again, phone in hand. He had dialed her number 47 times. Each time his thumb hovered over the green button and pulled back. He wasn't ready. Not until she was... So instead, he sent another bouquet and watched the city lights flicker like distant stars. Still hoping, still loving, still silent. The night of the Portland Rising Stars Business Awards was cooler than usual for May. Outside the historic Moreland Theater, a long line of city elites, tech founders, restaurateurs, media, execs, flowed up the red carpet under glowing bulbs and camera flashes. Inside the lobby was buzzing with champagne flutes, nervous energy, and ambitious whispers. And standing near the edge of the crowd, adjusting the sleeves of her borrowed blazer, was Lila Monroe. She looked every bit the part polished professional and wildly uncomfortable. "Jamie, I can't do this," she whispered into her phone, which was wedged between her shoulder and cheek while she fidgeted with her purse. "Everyone here looks like they flew in from Vogue." "You're a nominee," Jamie replied, her voice sharp but encouraging. "Young Businesswoman of the Year. You built a company out of a broken heart and a secondhand laptop. You belong here." "But what if he's here?" A beat of silence. Then you look him in the eye and show him exactly who he lost. Lila let out a long breath, hung up, and walked inside. From the shadows behind a velvet column near the back of the auditorium, Elijah Barrett stood watching her. He had arrived unannounced. No entourage, no press, just a dark suit, quiet steps, and a heart pounding harder than it had in years. She hadn't seen him, not yet, but he saw everything, the way she held her posture, proud but nervous, the way people greeted her, with admiration, and the way she scanned the room like she wasn't sure whether she wanted to find him or not. The ceremony was halfway through when the host finally took the mic for the night's biggest moment. And now she beamed the award for Young Businesswoman of the Year. "On sixtas bauerstas." Applause rippled through the crowd. The nominees appeared on the screen. Jasmine Clay, founder of Clay & Co., interior design. April Ramos, creator of Veggie Way meal kits. Lila Monroe, founder of Monroe and Co., marketing. The host opened the envelope with exaggerated flair. And the winner is... A pause. A smile. Lila Monroe. Lila froze. The applause hit her like a wave. She rose mechanical as if moving underwater and made her way up the stairs to the stage. The trophy was heavy in her hands. Glass shaped like a flame. Beautiful. Real. She stepped up to the podium, cleared her throat, and looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of faces. Some friendly, some indifferent, and one that made her breath catch. Elijah, standing in the shadows, Watching her, her heart stuttered, but she didn't run. She spoke. "Wow," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect to be standing here tonight. A year ago, I was working the morning shift at a cafe, trying to afford rent and wondering if I'd ever find my footing." A few chuckles, some nods. "I've learned a lot since then," she continued, her voice strengthening. "About business, yes. About clients, about campaigns, about late nights and coffee that tastes like regret." Laughter again. "But mostly, I've learned about people." The room quieted. "I've learned that the world doesn't owe you kindness, that some people will disappoint you, some will betray you, and some will break your heart, even if they didn't mean to." Elijah exhaled softly, jaw tight. "But I've also learned something else." She looked toward the back of the room, not directly at him, but close. "I've learned that not all love is perfect, that sometimes people make choices out of fear, not malice. That forgiveness isn't weakness, it's courage." A pause. You could have heard a pin drop. "And that the most beautiful kind of healing comes when you choose to trust again, even if your heart still carries scars." She looked down at the award in her hand, then back to the audience. "This isn't just about business. This is about becoming the kind of person who can stand on this stage, after being knocked down by life, love, and betrayal, and still believe in hope." Applause broke out like thunder. People rose to their feet. Elijah didn't move. He just stood there, his hands clenched, his eyes wet. He had no idea she would say those words. He didn't deserve them. And yet, she gave them anyway. Backstage, Lila leaned against the concrete wall, pulse still racing. She closed her eyes, trying to absorb what had just happened. Beautiful speech. Her eyes flew open. There he was, standing 10 feet away. Tired eyes, no entourage, no arrogance, just Elijah. She stared at him, and for a long suspended moment, they said nothing. Then she broke the silence. "You heard it. Every word. And I got the message," he said gently, "that maybe you're willing to give me a second chance." She sighed. "It's not that simple. I know. I still don't trust you completely. I don't expect you to, but I miss Eli," she admitted, voice trembling. "The one who made terrible jokes and brought me llama post-it notes." He stepped closer. "He still exists," he whispered. "But he's only real when he's with you." Tears prickled her eyes. "I'm not saying yes. I'm not asking for a yes," he said. "Just dinner?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Dinner. But if you lie again, I'll throw this trophy at your head." He smiled through misty eyes. "Fair enough." And for the first time in what felt like forever, they both smiled. Together. 3 months had passed since the gala. 3 months of long walks, late-night calls, hesitant laughter, and conversations that peeled back layers, one truth at a time. Lila Monroe had made one thing clear. She wasn't stepping back into love blindly. And Elijah Barrett hadn't asked her to. He showed up, not with grand gestures, but with consistency. He listened more than he spoke. He brought her lunch on days she was buried in deadlines. He helped her rebuild the shelves in her home office. He let her set the pace. And for Lila, that mattered more than roses or rooftop views. But tonight something was different. They were at Louis' Trattoria, a small Italian restaurant tucked into the corner of Hawthorne Avenue, the same place where they'd first had dinner as Eli and Lila. Only now there were no secrets, no disguises, just two people who had weathered the storm and were learning to love without armor. Elijah had been fidgeting all night, dropping his fork, misreading the menu, even spilling a bit of marinara on his cuff. "You okay?" Lila asked, raising an eyebrow. "Perfectly normal," he blurted. "Nothing weird at all. Definitely not hiding anything terrifying. You just salted your wine." "Did I?" "And sugared your salad." "Right, yes. Totally intentional. Italian fusion. Big trend." She leaned forward, arms folded. "Elijah?" He took a breath, then stood up, knocking his chair slightly. And then he dropped to one knee, right there, between the breadbasket and the window overlooking a parking meter. Lila's eyes widened. "Are you kidding me?" Every diner turned to look. Some clapped, a waitress squealed, someone started recording on their phone. Elijah held out a small, unassuming velvet box. "Lila Monroe," he said, voice shaking but eyes clear. "I lied once, and I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. But since then, I've told you the truth. Every day, in every way I could. Not just with words, but with presence, with patience, with love." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a tiny emerald, her birthstone. Nothing flashy, just right. I don't want a perfect life. I want a real one, with mismatched socks and Monday grocery runs and arguments about movie night. I want you. Tears welled in Lila's eyes. You're asking me to marry you in the middle of a family-run restaurant with a coupon wine list. I am, he said, smiling. It's the most you think I could do. She laughed, tears rolling down her cheeks, and nodded, yes. The restaurant erupted into cheers. The manager brought out a bottle of house champagne, likely purchased from the corner store, and even the cook emerged in a stained apron to offer his congratulations. As they clinked glasses, Lila leaned in. One condition. Anything. No 500 guest weddings. No yachts. No influencers. He grinned. Backyard. Barbecue. Family only. She kissed him, still laughing. Exactly what I was thinking. 3 months later, under strings of mismatched fairy lights and paper lanterns, Lila and Elijah said their vows in the backyard of her childhood home. Her dress was simple ivory lace and grace. His suit was borrowed from a friend. The catering was done by her uncle's taco truck, and it was perfect. The vows were short, the tears were real, and the crowd was filled with the kinds of people who hug too long and dance offbeat and mean it when they say, I'm proud of you. Jamie officiated. Elijah's mom cried before Lila even made it down the aisle, and when the music started, a live acoustic version of their favorite song, they danced barefoot on the grass, twirling under stars they could finally name. No lies. No disguises. Just two people who had found their way through missteps and misunderstanding, and chosen each other. Again, and again, and again. Not every love story begins with candlelight and roses. Sometimes it starts with a cockroach in a coffee shop and a leap into a stranger's lap. But that's what made Lila and Elijah's story unforgettable. Because their journey wasn't about perfection, it was about growth. It was about falling in love not with someone's image, but with their truth. It was about the courage to admit mistakes, and the even greater courage to forgive them. Lila didn't need a billionaire to rescue her. She built her own business brick by digital brick, fueled by heartache and hope. And Elijah, he didn't just fall in love with her. He learned from her. That authenticity matters more than legacy. That vulnerability is strength. That love is not a branding opportunity, but a daily decision. In the end, it wasn't the flowers, the fame, or even the fortune that mattered. It was the small things, the stapler refills, the grilled cheese lunches, the quiet support when the world turned cold. That's what built their forever. So if you've ever doubted second chances, if you've ever wondered whether love can survive lies pride and fear, let Lila and Elijah remind you, sometimes the person you're meant to be with is the one who sees you not for who you were pretending to be, but for who you were always afraid to show, and they love you anyway. Because the best kind of love is the kind that stays even after the mask comes off. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved, you share it with someone who believes in second chances.